Okay, so welcome to Module 11. We're on page 19 in your notes. Let me say this, after ear training last week, not only is ear training going to help a ton, but that type of ear training is one aspect of it. Tonight in Module 11, we're going to look at map symbols, and Module 12, we're going to look at a different type of ear training that's going to help you learn even more what's going on by transcribing. So Module 11 is map symbols. Now, I want to throw this out before we get going, that there are, most people in worship circles are using charts that have lyrics with a chord symbol above it. Tell me if this doesn't look familiar to you. Pretend these are the most godly inspired, divinely prophetic lyrics you've ever heard and seen, and you've got this on top, right? And here's some chord markings. Has everybody seen these? You guys use these like a million times all the day long, right? Because this is what most people do. Now the downside of this is you have no idea how long that G lasts by looking at it. You have to listen to it by rote. Let me go back. The whole premise of why I'm doing this is that you are an artist and you are created to create, not just copy. Copying is the first part of the process, but you want to assimilate the copying into innovating your own music, right? And so if our whole culture that we have right now is dependent on copying other people's songs, if that's all we're talking about, I would submit to you this is a very inefficient, poor process, and most people are satisfied with staying with this. Okay, but we can increase the depth of our artistic output and our expression to the Lord by going down this path that I'm taking you down. I'm not trying to turn everybody into, sight reading symphonic classical concerto music and fancy complicated stuff, but I want us to go a couple more steps because it's going to help us articulate our ideas and communicate them and so forth. So another downside to this is typically we might see verse and a chorus and a bridge, and then there's a very non-standard way of, well, wait, after the chorus, do I go right into the verse, or is there a few bars of like a transition thing? Is that the same as the intro, or do we go to the bridge? Where does it go? Most of our worship songs are also somewhat simplistic in their structure, and if this is all we have to work with, we could never get deeper and have more expressive structure expressions as we write our songs and we play. I've said this a couple times, it bears repeating, there are only really two realms of music in Western music history that have actually codified a way of teaching their music, and that's the jazz world and the classical world. I'm drawing from bits and pieces of both of them as we go forward. And those notation systems and the way we write things down I'm drawing from both of them, and I think a lot of musicians today are doing that. So initially we're going to look at things that we want to repeat in music. When we write them down, if we want sections or portions to repeat, we start with very small repeats. If I've got a bunch of different notes and I want to play those exact same notes again, here's a D, an A minor, and a G, and I want to do that exact same thing again, I put what looks kind of like a percent symbol there, if you see that. So that's a 1 bar repeat. Moving on, if I want to have 2 bars going at the same time, and I want to repeat both of them, and I do this, maybe that's in E. So I wanted to play E for 4 counts, and then D, A minor, G, and I wanted to do the exact same thing. Now I create the 2 bar repeat in the middle of two measures, and I take that bar line and I do 2 dashes and 2 dots, just like you see there in the 2 bar repeat. So that symbol means play this measure, play that measure again, and play that measure again. So it's a total of 4 measures, 2 times 2. Does that make sense? Okay. 2 bar repeats. Now if you look at the right-hand column of page 19, I think I said 18 on the video earlier. This is actually page 19, sorry. For medium-sized repeats, we use this thing that we get from the classical tradition of these repeat dots. Now there's a couple of rules with the repeat dots to bear in mind. First off, the dots to the right of a double bar line begins the repeated section. Dots to the left is the end of the repeated section. So you can see there on the right-hand column of 19, the first example does not have a repeat sign on the left side. So what that means, as it says underneath, go all the way back to the beginning and repeat once. So you would play those 4 measures that you see all the way through one time. You hit the repeat dots, means go back to the beginning because there are no other repeat dots, and play it again. So that would be play all those 4 measures twice before you move on to the next thing. And then the figure under that, we see a similar piece of music that's 4 bars long, but the final 2 measures, measure 3 and 4, are going to be repeated once. We play measure 1, play measure 2, play measure 3 and 4. Now repeat back to measure 3 and play 3 and 4 a second time before we move on. If there are no extra instructions, a repeated section should be played twice. Occasionally you'll see extra instructions over the repeat dots. For example, play this section 3 times. Let me unpack one of the little thing there that confuses a lot of people. Let's say there are these measures here, and I put the dots. Okay, if you just, and pretend that there's music inside those dots for me so I don't have to scroll a bunch of stuff that doesn't matter. Everybody with me so far? So we've got a 5-bar phrase. If we just stop here, that means play those 5 bars once, play them a second time, and move on. Okay? Now here's what throws a lot of people. What if I want the player or the musician to play it 3 times? If I write repeat 3 times, I've had different interpretations of this over the years that caused some confusion. Let me unpack what could potentially happen with this. I repeat it 3 times. Does that mean I play it once, and then I repeat it 3 times, or a total of 4? Or does it mean to play it 3 times, having repeated? And one person one time came up with, well, if this by itself means to repeat, and that's 2 times through, this means I need to do 3 repeats, or 3 times 2 is 6, and play it 6 times? And then I went, you know, I could see why you'd think that. I mean, it's not obviously the right answer. So, but I could see where they were going with it, because if this equals 2, and that says do 3 of them, 3 times 2 is 6. What's best is to indicate it in a way where there's no confusion. So a lot of times, I will try, instead of, if I just put, you know, let's say 5 times, if I want them to play a total of 5 times, 1 time through, and then repeat it 4 more times for a total of 5, I'll say play 5 times, or I might say 5 times total, or some other indicator to make it obvious of the total number of times to play. Otherwise, you're going to have some confusion, because I've hit it too many times. Does that make sense? Any questions on that? Really surprised there's no questions. Moving on to page 20. Excuse me. Yes, page 20. Now, endings. So many times when you have a section of music that you want repeated, maybe the last portion of the section, you want to have it end differently. So we have these endings. So now we've got a double dot here at the beginning of the phrase. We've got some measures. And now we want to repeat here. But the second time through, we want to do something different than what's the content of these measures here. So we'll make a bracket. We'll say first time. We'll do a double bar here. Make another bracket and say second time. And have some music in this area. Okay, so this is saying play this, play this, play this, play this, play this, play this. Repeat back. This is our first time. Play this, play this, play this. Wait, now it's our second time through, so we jump over, and the next measure we play is this and this and this. That principle keeps going with potentially 3rd endings or 4th endings and 5th endings. I've had actually 12 and 15 at times in some different pieces of music that I play, because maybe this section needs to get repeated a whole bunch of times, but it's going to end a little differently each time. Does that make sense on the surface? Okay, so you can see in that wonderfully prepared figure on the top right of the page 20, where some endings of sections may include a repeat while others do not. Now, it might be also that we've got to create a more complex roadmap than even what I've been able to give you.